Hey, I'm AnthonyRomano, and this video is going to tell you if keto bulking is going to kick you out of ketosis. So this is a question that only really gets asked by people who are very serious about keto bulking or high protein keto or things of that nature. But I'm going to answer the question because sometimes it might, and sometimes that might actually not be a problem. So I encourage you to stay to the end of the video because I'm going to throw out some amazing tips towards the end. And on that note, if you want to go straight to the promised land for the best keto shredding tactics, which might actually offer some muscle building during them, and I have a whole section on it, Keto Shred Program. Highly encourage you to go get this. This is on my website, romanoketo.com. It's the product of 10 years of keto experience, and there's absolutely some ability to build muscle while you're leaning down, and that's actually what I recommend for most people when they're getting into ketosis. So let's get into the video. So, for starters, if you could like this video, that's going to make YouTube show this content to more people. That's all you have to do to help me grow my page. But let's get into this, okay? So, as I've said before, I do recommend most people to cut down before they bulk, simply because you're going to arrive at better insulin sensitivity, you're going to have a much easier time building muscle and less likely to store fat. And especially when we're talking about keto bulking, the likelihood for fat storage is already pretty low. Now, if you're, concerned about the efficacy and how effective keto bulking is, I highly encourage you to watch my full year keto bodybuilding review, which is a video I made recently, basically where I reviewed 2020, where I stayed in ketosis basically 90% of the time, because that's just my, lifestyle after a decade of keto, that I now use it year-round. That's basically my thing, and I'll use carbs strategically here and there. But either way, when we're talking about strict keto bulking, I'm going to tell you that high protein is not necessarily going to end ketosis. So then you might be concerned about the calorie amounts, right? Now, you don't need a super high surplus on a keto bulk. A very small amount, very comparable to a lean bulk that you would do with carbohydrates. Except with keto, you're optimizing your insulin sensitivity and a lot of other things, and basically once you start actually incorporating carbs, they will work better for you. I have full videos on this on how carbs work better once you're ketogenic. Okay, type these things in. I have like 400 videos on here, maybe 500, probably more by the time. But on that note, I actually have some other protocols, like I said in Keto Shred, that teach you how to build muscle while you're cutting in a very small and subtle yet significant way. So here's the thing. The defining factor is training, protein intake, and basically progression, okay? So what does that mean? That means you need to eat enough protein so you have a positive nitrogen balance. That is the only thing that has been scientifically proven to be a necessity for muscle building. You need enough protein, you need more nitrogen, which breaks off the protein, and it's how they measure protein in your body. You need basically more coming in than you're using, okay? But a lot of people are concerned high protein is going to ruin ketosis. Well, you don't necessarily need to be in full ketosis when you're building muscle, okay? On that note, high protein is not what breaks keto necessarily. It just all comes down to the absence of carbohydrates. So if you want to maintain the ketogenic state, all you have to do is not eat carbs. That's what it comes down to. High fat and low protein is just one simple way to implement ketosis to maximize ketone production. But more ketones doesn't equal more fat loss, and it certainly doesn't equal more muscle gain. Now, on that note, sustaining that diet with those macros may be beneficial for supporting certain cholesterol levels that might be conducive to muscle building. There's great work on this from Dave Feldman. In his work, you can type in lean mass hyperresponders, okay? So granted, sustaining ketosis in that manner can, get your body used to it, build that fat adaptation engine in your body so you have a better ability to do these metabolic processes. But the point is, once you're in ketosis, so this also lines up with the original recommendation I said, where it's probably better for you to start cutting first, no matter what you're doing, and keto is a great way to do this, and if you do it ketogenically, you're going to improve your insulin sensitivity and a lot of other factors dramatically. Now keep in mind, any cut beforehand, anytime you're reducing how much you're taking in, you're going to improve your insulin sensitivity. But there's certain mechanisms with keto, because keto focuses on isolating hormones. This is why lots of people don't need to count calories when they're cutting with keto. But this was necessary for the bulking context here. That was all background detail here. So you need enough protein, you need hard enough training, adequate stimulus, and then you need to slowly progress your strength and, hypertrophy over time. So you need to constantly get better, because if you're not exposing your body to new stress, you're not going to build muscle. This is just a well-known, set in stone belief. But when we're looking at, is it going to break ketosis? Here's what you have to understand. Muscle building is not a byproduct of ketosis necessarily. It's not simply that being in ketosis is going to cause that. Ketosis is often referred to as the starvation state. It is not. It is the preservation state. It is the default metabolism our body wants to be in. it's just the baseline our body wants, because if you don't eat for longer than 12 hours, you're going to start producing more ketones. If you exercise about an hour after exercise, even if you're eating all the carbs in the world, you're going to start creating more ketones. This is called the Cortis-Douglas effect, and you can look this up. It's very verifiable stuff. So your body always is dipping in and out of ketosis at some point in the day, even if you're eating carbohydrates. So it's not as if there's a linear relationship here. These things are circular. There's checks and balances, and it's not just a if-then statement, okay? So what happens is you have ketosis in place, you're bouncing in and out of it, and this is going to amplify your responses to certain muscle building, tactics you're doing. Now, if you're somebody who's new and you're just starting keto, you're absolutely not going to notice a load of muscle gain, because your body's going to be used to a carb engine, carb metabolism you've been running off your whole life, basically, as the dominant energy engine. Now, ketogenically, all the benefits come when you are adapted. So I'm not going to lie to you here and tell you that you're going to gain muscle right off the first month of keto. No, you need to do keto for at least 4 to 8 weeks to get adapted. And from there, that's when you're going to have the enhanced metabolic flexibility to build muscle. So that's one starting premise here. But let's pretend we have somebody who is fully ketogenic, they're adapted, they're eating high protein. Even if somebody is eating like a 1,000 to 2,000 calorie surplus in the day, granted, are they going to be diminishing ketosis? Absolutely, because you have to understand everything in the body, every mechanism we have is a survival mechanism. Our bodies are survival and adaptive machines. So everything that is, unique to you and everything that is unique to me is only here as a result of being a necessity for our ancestors. And granted, we have a lot more in common than we do, different. Even though there's certain cultures in the world that would have less access to carbohydrates in the winter, and there's ones that would have more, like if you're from Hawaii or something, the point is there would still be parts of the year where you did not have sugar accessible, and if you weren't able to build muscle during those times, you wouldn't be here. If you weren't able to adapt to stress, you would not be here. And if you couldn't hunt, if you couldn't go out and gather and build resources and build structures, you would not be here. So that is the sort of evolutionary context. Now let's pretend we have that person. They're eating 5,000 calories a day. Even if it's ketogenic, you're going to have higher rates of conversion to glucose if you're slamming the protein. So if you're having 500 grams of protein a day, you're going to have more conversion to glucose in your bloodstream. But this is not necessarily a problem, okay? A lot of keto gurus have this tendency to frame, sugar as if it's poison. It is not poison. You need it. It is literally your life force, and your liver can make all that you need every single day, right? That is gluconeogenesis. But when we're looking at applying this into keto bulking, it actually might not be a problem, because on the whole, you're still going to be increasing your insulin sensitivity, increasing these other factors that are related to muscle building, and sensitizing your body to muscle building. You're going to be lowering mTOR, which is the primary muscle building pathway. And then by doing that in a very deep ketogenic state, when you're sleeping, when you're fasting, and when you're doing keto, you're going to be amplifying its need to really slam the muscle building once you are actually getting enough protein and training adequately. Okay, the only thing that's ever required to build muscle is enough protein, and insulin helps, but insulin after a certain point does not lead to more muscle gain. There's plenty of work on this and studies I've referenced in Keto Shred that actually explain this. But the point is, more insulin, which is the typical carb dirty bulk that everybody does not lead to more muscle gain, and it actually reduces your insulin sensitivity. It makes you more insulin resistant. So what is this whole dichotomy of insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity? Well, the more sensitive you are to insulin, the more effectively you're going to do every anabolic process in your body. Insulin is the most anabolic hormone in the body, and this goes for muscle building and fat storage, okay? It is not simply, anabolic does not simply mean only muscle building. So when we're looking at, the propensity to build muscle when you are more insulin sensitive, it almost seems like the people who are already in really good shape are going to get better results. And it's because that's true. This is a biblical, thing. It's called the Matthew principle. The more you have, the easier it is to gain, okay? The less you have, the harder it is. So it's a momentum law. That's what it is. So when we look at somebody who's already in good shape, they're already going to have a better ability to use resources, right? Anabolic resources. So of course they could store fat, also, but the point is it's going to be more effective. They're not going to spill over and store more fat than they already need to. So if you're doing a carb dirty bulk, you're just going to make it harder for your body to actually use insulin effectively. And I know I'm only talking about insulin here. It's not the be-all, end-all of muscle gain and fat loss, which is, again, another, problem that a lot of keto gurus advertise here. But it is foundational. And on the whole, if you can lower your insulin, and not saying that it's going to be tanked on keto. It's just going to be lower and more stable. You're going to sensitize your body to having better responses to it. So even if that insulin goes high, because that is necessary for muscle building, it's necessary, but not in excess. So even if you eat a load of protein, even if you eat a load of calories and it's all ketogenic, there's no carbohydrates at all, you're still going to have some conversion to glucose, but this is not necessarily a problem, okay? This is why I always like to frame things as solely focusing on your input. This is why you rarely see me measure blood glucose or ketones, right? I rarely do those things even after a decade of keto because, I've learned that it is not, it's just an outcome, right? It's not necessarily correlated to certain results. So you just need to focus on doing things the right way, cutting out the carbs, getting enough protein, training hard enough, and, of course, having adequate energy for your body to build muscle. But the point is, if you're on a ketogenic metabolism, you have access to a energy source, fat, that is 9 calories a gram, okay? And carbohydrates are only 4. This is more than doubly effective of fuel, and you're not going to require as many total grams of food in order to hit your calorie goals or your energy needs. And the thing is, too, we also have this concept of BMR, basal metabolic rate. So you have to eat a certain amount of calories to stay the same, right? Well, here's the thing. Even if you don't eat anything, you're going to be using that BMR. So if you eat nothing and your BMR is 2,000, you're still going to run through 2,000 calories worth of energy that day. Just your body's going to take it from stored fuel. So a lot of times you're always going to hit your basal metabolic rate if you're on a ketogenic metabolism because your body has a higher ability to tap into those fat stores. I have videos on the fat burning effects of keto, how you get up to 230% more fat burn and usage basically when you're ketogenic. So this is also why it's not just all about calories. Now, I know this seems very much like it's deviating from the advice you've probably been told your whole life, but you have to realize that advice is simply just the quantitative way to look at things. Like I said before, I like to focus on the inputs because sometimes measuring the outputs, like the blood glucose measurements or the ketone measurements, doesn't always equal certain results. But when you frame things in a quantitative manner, it makes it easier for people to understand. If I tell you how many calories, how much protein to eat per day, then that's one easy way for you to take certain things and to focus on them, right? This is why you always need to merge the two, and you want a balance of both. They're two sides of the same coin. So you want to look at your total protein calorie intake, right? Make sure you're getting enough exercise. Look at those things quantitatively, but don't forget that there are hormonal inputs that you could manage. And when you do a keto bulk, you're basically managing the hormonal side of the coin because you're always maximizing the effects that you're going to have from anabolic hormones. So that's kind of the other side of the coin here, and that's why some of this advice might seem like it's completely contradictory to everything you've been told. But the point is, that's only because everything you've been told only focuses on one side of the coin, because it focuses on the side of the coin that's easier to tell people, okay? Unless you want to sit through a 10-minute video where you hear a guy talking about all these philosophical, biblical references and shit like that, you're probably not going to learn too much about this, and that's why I've spent years trying to study these things and implement them with my clients and myself to kind of work out the kinks and fine details. So, on that note, if you enjoyed this video, like it, subscribe, and follow. I'm going to be posting plenty of other content on my experiences bulking on keto, cutting on keto, working with people for a variety of different issues, diabetes, brain injuries, lots of stuff like that. So I encourage you to stay tuned, hit the notification bell, and if you want to go, like I said, straight to the promised land for keto fat loss and possibly muscle building at the same time, which I've seen so many times, Keto Shred Program, RomanoKeto.com. If you want to speak with me one-on-one and get an action plan out of it, I offer 60-minute Skype consultations on my website that you can book right now. And I also offer 24/7 coaching where you and I are in communication all day long, just like two buddies, okay? And we're working out all the fine kinks after I've already made you a plan. So that's, the ways to take this deeper if you don't just want to go watch some more of my free videos, but there's a lot of them. So I encourage you to do that. And I'm Anthony Romano. Peace. Also follow me on Instagram too, okay? Peace.